Okay, in this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to diagnose if you have a bad blower motor resistor. So if your blower motor circuit is working improperly, more than likely it's going to be due to the blower motor resistor. And the reason why it's most likely to fail is because the blower motor resistor is constructed in such a way that it is subject to corrosion, and it's in an environment that subjects it to elements that cause corrosion, such as heat and moisture. So that's going to be the component most likely to fail. The vehicle I'm demonstrating this in is a 2002 Mustang GT. So let me turn on the ignition so we can demonstrate this. First, obviously, you need your ignition on. Matter of fact, I'll just start up the car, because if the car's not running and the vacuum reservoir is low, this switch won't switch vents. Not that it matters, but for this demonstration, but still. Okay. Now, when this switch is off, which is in the up position, the vent selector switch, nothing should happen. Power you won't have power present. If you select this switch to any position but off, there are 3 other positions on each side, total of 7 positions, center position off, the fan should go on. It hasn't gone on. So since the fan's not running, I know I got a problem. And I don't have to switch through all these switches. There's no reason to. Just switch it to any position other than off, not running. Now I go to from low to M1 and M2. I'm not working in any of these positions, but I am working in high. Okay? There you go. I now know I have power to the fan motor. It's running in high. So we know that there's nothing wrong with the motor, but it's not running at any of the other speeds. Since it's not running in low, but is running in high, I know I have a bad resistor, and it can't be anything else because the switch here, this switch, does not switch it to low. It is always in low. It only switches it to the other speeds, because the connection to the low speed circuit is always present. It's basically a resistor. Here it is. Here's the new BAOS resistor. So that the position for low comes in here and goes out here, which makes it go through all these resistors. Requires it to go through each one of these 3 resistors on this blower motor resistor. So, and that connection is always made. It's always there. So if it's not running in low, it would have to be a bad resistor, or it could be a bad connector. Either right here, or in this particular resistor does come with a new connector, or the connector right here could be bad. That could be bad contacts there. Can't be anything else except for potentially the wiring, but it's unlikely. That wire is not subject to abrasion, the wiring to this connector. So it's unlikely to be the wiring. Okay, so how do you know your BAOS resistor is good? Well, if your BAOS resistor works in low, then you could take it to the bank. There's nothing wrong with your BAOS resistor. It has to be good for the reason I just said. If it works in low, no matter what else this switch is doing, if it works in low, that means it has to go through each one of these resistors, including this thermal fuse. It's going through everything in this circuit, all 3 resistors plus this fuse to get back to ground. So it's going through the whole enchilada there. So that means this resistor has to be good. It can't possibly be bad. The only way, there's one caveat. The resistor could be bad if when it's in low and running, but running faster than it should be, then it could be bad. But that's not that likely, but it's possible. And that would be due to if any one or more of these bimetallic springs here, or bimetallic tabs, are permanently shunted. So if these were permanently pressed against the resistor, then that would make it run faster. And normally these do from heat. If it gets too hot, it's designed so that when it gets too hot, these bimetallic springs will bend in towards the resistor, which is basically a nichrome spring, a nichrome coil, and it will shunt the coil. And by shunting it, it will reduce the resistance and make the fan run faster. So if it was permanently shunted, it would cause the motor to run at a higher speed when it was then supposed to run in low, and that would also be bad. So that's another way it could be bad. But basically, if it runs in low and it runs at its proper speed in low, if it runs slow in low, then there's nothing wrong with your resistor. Okay, but in this case, it's not running in low, but is running in high. So I know the problems in my resistor. So let's go and see how easy that is to fix. Turn off the power to your car. Now, one thing to note is you don't have to worry about disconnecting the battery, because the circuit that runs through here is the ground side of the motor. So it's not going to cause a problem if you were to short out to ground, because it is ground. So you don't have to worry about that. You can leave your battery connected. The resistor is going to be located under the glove box, or behind the glove box and under the dash, right behind the glove box. So it's pretty easy to find, not too hard to access. You do have to kind of crouch down to get to it, but as things go, it's fairly easy access and fairly easy replacement. So let me take you over there. Okay, so here I've repositioned the camera under the dashboard, immediately behind the glove box, and you should clearly be able to see the resistor. It's right here. Actually, you can't see the resistor, and actually you can see the plate, the mounting plate for the resistor, which is right here, this brownish plate. So the first thing you would do is to remove the connector. So all you have to do is, there's a push tab right here, facing away from you, facing to the front of the car. You just push in that tab and pull down. And there you go. So it's that easy. There's the tab. You just push that down and pull out. That's simple. Nice and easy. Now, once you do that, right away, you can look at the connector. And don't be deceived. This connector does look, if you look at it at the end, it might look a little blackish, but don't automatically assume that means it's bad. What really is a better indicator is looking at the sides here, because it is somewhat translucent, and as you can see on the sides, those female tab connectors inside there, they are bright brass colored. See here, it's bright brass colored, and see here, the bright brass colored. No indication of burning, so, or overheating. So you can be fairly sure there's nothing wrong with this connector. So I'm not going to replace it, even though the resistor I purchased did come with a new connector. Just because it came with a new connector doesn't mean you should replace it. Doesn't necessarily mean you would do any better job if you did. As a matter of fact, if you replace that connector, when you make those crimp connectors, even if you're really good at making crimp connections, you're still a human. So by doing that, you've introduced another point of failure. It is true. A perfect crimp connector, perfectly done, there's no issues, nothing wrong with it. It's just as good as a solid wire. However, who is perfect all the time? So there's no reason to, and also, it's not about you being perfect either. The crimp itself could be defective in some way. So there's no reason to introduce more points of failure. If there's nothing wrong with this connector, don't replace it just because you have a new one. So anyway, now that we've went over that, the next step is just to remove the 2 screws that mount it, and they are 8mm heads. I'm using a 5/16 socket. As a matter of fact, a 5/16 socket is about 2.5 thousandths smaller than 8mm, so it's actually a better fit than 8mm. And there you go. So basically, for all practical purposes, 5/16 and 8mm, when it comes to sockets, are pretty much exactly the same. Because within tolerances, I'm sure there isn't any difference. 2 screws are all it takes to remove it. And there you go. There's the blower motor resistor. As you can see, it's very well corroded, and here we can see the problem we had. This wire here, let's see if I can get a screw to use. This terminal here, or this terminal, is rusted away. And this wire is connected to nothing, and this wire is connected to nothing. This terminal should be continuing over to here, and these 2 wires should be connected to this terminal. They rotted away. So there you go. Undoubtedly, no doubt at this point, that it's the ballast resistor. 100% conclusive. No doubt. That's another thing too. I mean, you pull out the ballast, the blower motor resistor, it's almost going to be, in most cases, you will be able to tell, just like in this case, just by looking at it, that the blower motor resistor is bad, if it's bad. You know, you pretty much be able to tell if it's good or bad just by looking at it. Pretty much amounts to, you know, rusting away. Normally, in most cases, the resistors themselves, they're made out of nichrome, which is relatively inert. It's not that reactive with moisture. So more than likely they'll be fine. And as you can see, there's nothing wrong with them. Even the fusible or the this thermal fuse, even that appears to be good. So the thing that's most likely to go bad is basically its weakest link, and the fact that these bimetallic springs are made out of steel, and they're subject to heat and humidity, because you know when you run your air conditioning, you got moisture. You're pumping out moisture. When you're running heat, there's moisture present. You know, humidity, and this resistor gets hot, and between the heat and the moisture, the bimetallic springs here are going to corrode at an accelerated rate. You know, so it's just the nature of the way this thing works, and the environment it works under. There's only a matter of time before it corrodes. So this is just bound to happen eventually. So again, most likely place for you to have a problem. Okay, so Here's the new resistor. One thing to note before you install the resistor is that there are 2 mounting holes and 1 locating hole. So make sure you put it back in its proper position. There is a locating dowel. Maybe you can see that up here. I don't know if it shows up that well on the camera, but up there you should see that locating dowel. If you can't, it's there. Trust me. So anyway, make sure you put it in the proper location, and that will be with this tab here, this key pointing to the back. That will, and because the locating dowel is going to be on the front left. That's where it is, up there. So this is the way you put it back in. Camera's kind of in my way. I can't see what I'm doing. There you go. So that's in, and again, I can't really see what I'm doing because the camera's where I would need to be to look. Okay. Tighten this one up. There you go. One more screw. Don't go too crazy when you tighten these screws up, because they're only screwing into plastic. So just make them good and firm. Tighten them too tight, you can strip them. Okay, and then you can put the connector in. If you like, you can put a little bit of dielectric, silicone dielectric on there. As a matter of fact, I probably will. Let me go get some silicone dielectric. Okay, I couldn't find any dielectric, but I did find some silicone grease, super loop. Truth of the matter is, any silicone grease will do, because silicone is inherently dielectric. It won't conduct electricity, but at the same time, it will not insulate. So it won't prevent electricity from being conducted. So it's neutral in that regard, but it will help to prevent the surfaces from oxidizing, and it will help to keep moisture out. So there you go. That's pretty much what you want a dielectric to do. So I'll put some on here, on all the connectors here, and then I'll put just a little around the perimeter of this connector. That's more than enough. Kind of rub that around with my finger so we're all smeared on there, around the perimeter there. Okay. And then all next we need to do is just take this connector. I can't see what I'm doing because the camera's in the way. And plug it in. And there you go. Make sure that that it's snapped in, and you know you're good. So there you go. It's done. It's repaired. Now, let's see if it's working properly. Okay, so start up the car. Turn this off. Okay, if this is working properly the way it's supposed to work now, as soon as I switch this to any position, this fan, the blower, should come on. So let's see. The blower's running. Now you can't hear it. Let me put this in there. So you can see the blower is running. It's off now. Switch it to here. You can see it running. Okay, so it's running in low, running in M1 a little bit faster, running in M2 even faster, and running in high. So it's working in all speeds now. So now we know it's repaired.